Why did Machiavelli expose the darkest secrets of leadership? How did Machiavelli discover that kindness destroys empires? Picture this for a moment. You're in Florence, year 1513. A man walks through dusty streets, watching every political move, every betrayal, every fall from grace. This man had just lost everything: his career, his influence, almost his life itself. But it was precisely in this downfall that Niccolò Machiavelli made the most disturbing discovery in the history of leadership. For years, as Secretary of the Florentine Republic, Machiavelli witnessed something that would forever shake his view on power and leadership. He saw kind, ethical, and just leaders completely destroyed by ruthless adversaries. He watched entire republics crumble because their leaders refused to make tough decisions. And it was in this brutal laboratory of Renaissance politics that he grasped a truth that still haunts the corridors of power today. Naive goodness is the fastest road to destruction. But here's what most people don't understand about Machiavelli. He wasn't celebrating evil. He was performing an autopsy on reality. Like an archaeologist of power, he excavated layer by layer the ruins of failed leaders and discovered a terrifying pattern. They all shared the same fatal characteristic: the inability to recognize that the real world operates by different rules than those we learn in moral textbooks. Machiavelli's disturbing genius was realizing that high-performance leadership requires a complex psychological duality. You need to be capable of acting with compassion when necessary, but you must also have the mental discipline to make brutally pragmatic decisions when survival is at stake. He called this necessity that transcends conventional morality. Think about the great leaders in history you admire. All of them, without exception, had to make decisions that kept them awake at night. All faced moments where choosing the good would mean destroying everything they fought for. Machiavelli was the first to systematically document this uncomfortable reality, creating a survival manual for leaders who need to navigate treacherous waters. The high-performance mindset that Machiavelli revealed isn't about being cruel for pleasure. It's about developing the psychological capacity to do what's necessary to protect something greater than yourself. It's about understanding that sometimes being truly ethical means being willing to carry the weight of seemingly unethical decisions. If you've ever wondered why some leaders can weather devastating crises while others crumble, Machiavelli has the answers. But these answers come with a price. You'll never see leadership the same way again. Drop necessity in the comments. Does this word resonate with some tough decision you've had to make? Hit that like button if you're ready for an archaeological journey through the darkest secrets of leadership. And subscribe to our channel so we can unearth together the hidden codes of high performance. Why do the most effective leaders master the art of manipulation? Here's a truth that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. A high-performance leader is, by definition, a manipulator. But before you close this video in indignation, let me explain what Machiavelli really discovered about this dark art and why it's absolutely essential for anyone who wants to lead effectively. When Machiavelli observed the corridors of power in Florence, he noticed something fascinating. Leaders who refused to manipulate were invariably manipulated by others. It was as if there existed a hidden law of leadership. If you don't consciously master influence techniques, you become an unconscious victim of these very same techniques. But what Machiavelli understood by manipulation was far more sophisticated than the popular concept suggests. For him, strategic manipulation was the ability to architect scenarios where all parties win, even if they don't immediately realize how this happens. It was about creating incentive structures so well designed that people naturally do what's best for the collective. Think about Cesare Borgia, one of the figures Machiavelli studied obsessively. Borgia had an almost supernatural ability to make allies out of enemies, not through brute force, but through a deep understanding of human psychology. He knew exactly which button to press in each person to awaken loyalty, fear, ambition, or gratitude as the situation demanded. The mental discipline this requires is extraordinary. You need to develop a human reading capacity so refined that you can predict how different personality types will react to different stimuli. You need to cultivate the patience of a chess master, always thinking 3 moves ahead, And perhaps most importantly, you need the emotional maturity to use this power constructively. Machiavelli realized that truly effective leaders operate on multiple layers of consciousness simultaneously. On the surface, they present a clear and inspiring narrative, but underneath, there exists a complex architecture of incentives, consequences, and rewards that guides people's behavior, almost invisibly. The genius of this approach lies in its sustainability. When you force people to do something against their natural will, you create resistance and resentment. But when you structure situations so that people want to do what's necessary, you get not just compliance, but genuine enthusiasm. This isn't cynicism, it's social engineering. It's the difference between a leader who needs to constantly watch and coerce their team, and a leader whose followers work with passion, even when they're not present. It's the difference between power based on fear and power based on admiration. The high-performance mindset that Machiavelli revealed requires you to become a perpetual student of human nature, to develop the ability to see through social masks and understand people's real motivations, to learn to create win-wins so elegantly that people don't even realize they're being led. Comment architect if you're starting to understand that leadership is much more about applied psychology than natural charisma. Don't forget to like if this content is changing your perspective on power and influence. How did Machiavelli decode the mental blueprint of immortal rulers? There's a disturbing secret that Machiavelli discovered when studying rulers who stayed in power for decades while others fell within months. It wasn't charisma, it wasn't luck, it wasn't even technical competence. It was something much deeper and psychologically complex. The ability to think like an institution, not like a person. During his years of meticulous observation, Machiavelli noticed that failed leaders always made the same fatal mistake. They governed with their own values, their own emotions, their own moral limitations. Meanwhile, rulers who created lasting legacies had developed an almost supernatural ability. They could completely separate their individual personality from the needs of the office they held. This discovery was revolutionary because it revealed that high performance in leadership requires a kind of controlled schizophrenia. During the day, you are the institution, cold, calculating, relentlessly pragmatic. During the night, you return to being human with doubts, fears, and moral codes. But never, ever can you allow these two identities to contaminate each other. Ferdinand of Aragon was a perfect example of this duality. Publicly, he was the embodiment of divine justice, an exemplary Catholic king. But behind the scenes, his decisions were dictated exclusively by cold, mathematical power calculations. He could order the expulsion of thousands of Jews in the morning and sincerely pray for these same Jews at night, because he had learned to compartmentalize these two realities. The psychological genius of this approach lies in its mental efficiency. When you try to govern using only your personal values, you waste gigantic emotional energy fighting internal contradictions. But when you accept that institutional leadership operates by different rules than personal life, you free your mind to focus on what really matters: results. Machiavelli realized that this mindset requires extraordinary philosophical discipline. You need to develop the ability to zoom out from your own human experience and see situations from an almost alien perspective. You need to learn to value system preservation above individual moral purity. This doesn't mean becoming a psychopath. It means developing what we might call institutional consciousness, the ability to make decisions based on long-term collective welfare, even when this conflicts with your immediate moral instincts. Leaders who master this technique become almost politically immortal because they don't depend on constant emotional approval. They know their decisions will be judged by history, not by current public opinion. They know that preserving the institution is more important than preserving their own image. The high-performance mindset that Machiavelli mapped requires you to become a consummate actor in your own life, to develop multiple functional personas and know when to activate each one, to learn to carry the weight of necessary decisions without allowing that weight to paralyze your ability to act. It's a form of leadership that transforms you into a guardian of something greater than yourself. And perhaps that's exactly what separates historical leaders from forgotten ones. Write Guardian in the comments if you're realizing that true leadership is about serving something greater than your own ego. Like this video if you're ready to develop this institutional mindset. Why does Machiavelli's strategy still dominate modern power centers? You may not realize it, but you're living in a completely Machiavellian world. Every important political decision, every major corporate move, every significant international negotiation follows exactly the principles this man codified over 500 years ago. And this isn't coincidence, it's because Machiavelli didn't invent strategies, he discovered natural laws of human power. Look at any major modern corporation. Behind the facade of corporate values and social responsibility, there's a Machiavellian machine working perfectly. The most effective CEOs know when to be publicly compassionate and when to be privately ruthless. They know how to structure incentives so employees voluntarily do what's necessary for the company. They know how to use both fear and hope to keep everyone aligned with organizational objectives. The difference is that today this strategy is applied with a psychological sophistication that Machiavelli couldn't even imagine. We have big data to map behaviors, artificial intelligence to predict reactions, neuroscience to understand motivations. But the fundamental principles remain exactly the same as those he observed in Renaissance palaces. Take any current geopolitical negotiation. You'll see world leaders using exactly the tactics Machiavelli documented, creating temporary alliances based on mutual interests, using public opinion as a pressure tool, alternating between seductive diplomacy and shows of force, always keeping multiple options open. Machiavelli's timeless genius lies in his understanding that certain psychological dynamics are constants in human nature. Regardless of technology, culture, or era, people still respond to the same basic stimuli: status, security, belonging, purpose. And whoever understands how to orchestrate these stimuli has a gigantic strategic advantage. The high-performance mindset that Machiavelli revealed is more relevant today than ever because we live in a world of extreme complexity. The decisions you make have ramifications that extend far beyond what you can predict. In this context, the ability to think strategically, to consider multiple scenarios simultaneously, to separate emotions from rational analysis, becomes absolutely critical. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Machiavelli's legacy is this: once you develop this analytical lens, you can no longer unsee the power structures around you. You begin to perceive the strategies behind the strategies, the manipulations behind the manipulations, the games within the games. And this puts you face to face with a fundamental choice. You can use this knowledge to become a more effective player in the existing system, or you can use this understanding to build better systems. Machiavelli gives you the tools, but the ethical application of these tools depends entirely on you. The truth is, you're already participating in these power games, whether you want to or not. The only question is whether you'll participate consciously, with strategy and mental discipline, or whether you'll just be another piece on someone else's chessboard. The archaeology of success we're doing here reveals that knowledge is moral neutrality. It's a tool, and like any powerful tool, it can build or destroy, depending on who wields it and for what purpose. Comment tool: if you understood that power itself is neutral, everything depends on how you choose to use it. And if this content is changing how you see the world, share it with someone who needs to develop the strategic consciousness.